Are my hair cute? I feel like it's in
Are my hair cute?
Are my hair? Yes, your one hair is cute.
All these people with their two languages.
my hair. Is that
It's
it?
fucking
I was like, it's my... Whatever, yes it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was like, what's the problem, guys?
Is that a bone?
Is it,
I don't
is
know.
it, is
Hair?
the question is or are?
What was the
Is.
sentence?
Is my hair cute or whatever you said?
Are my hair good?
Is my
Yeah.
hair
No.
good?
Oh my god.
Welcome back to another episode of Learn English with Coach Tim. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the North Leeds Jitz podcast. Once more around the fire pit in Meanwood. Today we've got a silent guest in Veronica Schuder, Coach Veronica. We've got Zoe. Zoe, I don't know your surname.
My last name?
Yeah.
Casey.
Zoe Casey and Jeremy Pare.
Wow, good job.
Thank you. I've been practicing all week. So a lot of the new members won't know Jeremy, but he spent a couple of weeks with us a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and a good friend of the academy, and you taught a class today, and it's always nice to have you here, man, so thanks for coming on.
Man, I always love coming down to GBR. I think, like, for sure, one of my favorite schools to go to across the world. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, so thanks, guys, for today.
So we've got some Instagram questions we can get to eventually, but last time you were on, you were touring around with Kendall for her seminar tour and working in California. What's been happening since then?
Yeah, so about in February, I decided I went back home to my home school, Gracie Baja, Ottawa, with my professor. In the last 10 months, I've been kind of helping my professor run that school, train out there. And yeah, so what kind of led me to this trip was getting ready for British Open this Saturday. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to, just teaching, training, same old. Yeah, it's been fun. I think with Kendall, it was one of the best learning experiences I've ever had. You know, I spent maybe a year and a half in total in California, and I've learned so much over there, not just like on the mats, but really outside the mats. You know, everything in terms of being an athlete and being a professional in jiu-jitsu. And yeah, I'm super grateful for that experience. And yeah, that was amazing.
What you got promoted to brown belt in that time as well. What was that like for you? Because you competed the first day you got your brown belt, right? And then won a brown belt tournament.
Yeah, so
Which isn't fair.
yeah, we started talking about the brown belt. A big reason we wanted to go to the brown belt was leg locks. You know, at the time of the purple belt, or still now, you couldn't do any heel hooks or anything like that. And I had been working a lot in California on adding that to my game. So that was a big reason why we moved up. So I got promoted to brown belt at 10 a.m. From Professor Kendall, Professor Sowell, and Professor Kendall's dad, Professor Tom. And after that, 4 p.m., I headed out to SGIF Worlds and won my brown belt division over there. So yeah, it was really fun.
It's not fair, man. So you've been teaching a lot in Ottawa. What's it like being back at your home school? 'Cause is this the one you also kind of grew up in?
Yeah, so my professor gave me my white belt when I was 6 years old. And then about 5 years ago, we split from our original school to become Gracie Baja. And then since Gracie Baja, I really was a big part of that team until the pandemic hit. And then when the pandemic hit, Canada was really, really bad in terms of lockdowns. Like, we couldn't do anything. So that was my main motivation to head out to the States and start training. I first went down to Gracie Baja West Chase with Professor Upiano, Professor Pedro, and that team over there. And they really taught me how to be a champion. You know, being with Pedro, arguably one of the best champions in Gracie Baja, at least right now, really helped me understand what it took to be a champion. And then after that, I had some car problems, and then ended up heading out to see Professor Kendall, and there I really learned kind of like the off the mat stuff. You know, really helped with the program directing over there. And then the last time I was there, I helped her run one of her schools, the Gracie Baja Corona. And that was really, really awesome. And now that I'm back home with my professors, it's been really awesome to kind of see the whole team grow so much, especially in the time that I was gone. Yeah, it's been really fun to be back with the team back at home. So yeah, it's been cool.
Awesome, man. Let's get to one of our Instagram questions, and we can just keep mixing them in. We'll start with a fun one from. I'll say the Instagram, just because you might know it. It's Samu Real Lex. I don't know if you know that person from home. How does his hair stay so nice even while sparring? What are the hair tips for Jitz?
Still top. No. Yeah, my hair game definitely has to be on point. Obviously, right now. Sorry. Sorry, guys, we almost died. Yeah, my hair game is like definitely an important thing. I know right now I'm wearing a hat, so we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, just put a lot of gel and you should be fine, and don't suck.
Will there be an instructional series about systematically gelling the hair?
Going further faster at the barbershop. Yeah. Potentially one day. I'll post a little video sometime on tutorial how to do your hair for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Let's switch. Zoe.
Yes. How to do my hair?
Yeah. How do you do Jeremy's hair? Let's be serious.
I don't do Jeremy's hair.
No one touches Jeremy's
I don't
hair.
deal with that.
It takes 30 minutes for me to get ready, 5 minutes to shower, 25 minutes to do the hair.
Zoe's a purple belt. Trained to get today. It's really good. And then, what's your story? How did you start into jiu-jitsu?
So I was 7 years old. My dad just started to do traditional jiu-jitsu, which is like more of a self-defense version of jiu-jitsu, if I can say it this way. And honestly, I was just so curious about it, so I just decided to start. Honestly, I didn't even thought about it. I just started with my sister, and honestly, I was not even asking myself any questions. I was just showing up on the mats every week, and I was doing a little bit of BJJ during that time as well. And at one point, when I was around 16 years old, I just decided to shift to BJJ completely. So yeah, that's pretty much how I.
And does your sister still train?
No, she stopped maybe like a year or two after.
Okay.
She just started to do some dance.
So now you can beat her up if you have a fight. You know,
Yeah,
like...
I'm showing her some nice jokes.
When she's annoyed you. Let me show you this nice joke.
Exactly.
Hey, can I try something? Come over here.
Jeremy, you got siblings as well, right?
Yeah, I got a younger brother who's a giant, and I have an older sister as well.
Do they train?
Yeah, we actually all started together. What kind of got us started was this after-school program, and just because we all went to the same school, we started together. And then my brother stayed with it until he started playing soccer, or I guess football.
Yep, I'm glad you got the right one.
And then after that, kind of quit. And then my sister, she dealt with a lot of injuries, so that's kind of what made her stop. But yeah, I just kind of kept going. Always loved it. But I'm trying to get them back in. I actually just did a private a few weeks ago with my brother. It was great to just beat him up.
Good, nice. I'm always a big fan of sibling on sibling violence. One of my favourite things is especially in the juniors and teens class, we have like a lot of siblings. So it's always nice to bring them out as that sole pair rolling and have them fight each other. Like, win your parents' love. Let's go.
And you never roll as hard as when you roll with your sibling.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Well, yeah, you look at Cade and Tyru Otola when they roll, and it just turns into a scrap. Like,
yeah. Kid and Ty, Paul as well. Like, it's weird. A lot of those siblings that train together and stay together often end up being very, very good. You know, you can think like the Finegger girls in AOJ, like so many of them.
Yeah, Victor Braulio. Like, there's loads. Janji and Saulo. Like, on that kind of, so another one from Ashley Richards. Having started young, advice for parents to encourage their children to stay in BJJ long term.
Main thing I would say, don't push kids to competition. You know, like some kids just want to train and have fun training, and a lot of the times, most of the time, it's the parents that quit. It's not the kid that quit.
Yeah.
And a big thing with that is to really make sure that if the kid does not want to compete, don't force him. For a few reasons. Like, one, the chances of them actually performing when they don't want to be there is very, very low. The big thing is they just want to have fun, and that's what makes them quit. The best way to keep your kid in jiu-jitsu is make sure that, after X many years, they still have fun. For me, what kept me in it that long was really like, I found myself loving teaching, and I started teaching young, and I really loved that part, and I also loved the kind of fighting aspect of it. So, and my professors did a really good job making sure that I could always do both, compete and teach, and I think that's really, really helped me. But for the parents, the main thing I would say is just make sure they're having fun, and it's okay if they don't want to do it sometimes. It's better for them to take a night off or to chill than to push them to go and have them end up quitting.
What do you think if it's a kid that is like constantly like, I don't want to go to jiu-jitsu tonight, and it's always a fight for them to try bring?
It depends the reasoning. If the kid is just being like lazy, then okay, sometimes you do have to push a little bit harder. If it happens every single night, it probably means that the kid just doesn't want to go. And that's okay. Not everyone wants to, but yeah, the big thing is just first talk to the child and ask them, like, okay, well, what's your favorite part about jiu-jitsu? It's like, why do you actually like going to jiu-jitsu? A lot of the people that don't know why they go that's usually why they end up leaving.
Yeah.
If you keep remembering why you love going to jiu-jitsu in your first class, and usually you'll be able to stick with it. The big thing is that just enjoy the process. Don't rush anything.
I think I talk to the parents now that are struggling with kids that are unmotivated, or at least kids go through a lot of phases, I think, of like when they really love Jitz, and then they'll hate it for a while, then they love it again, and it's just like normal kind of kid stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's tough for the parents to stick out the times when it's low and you're paying, I don't know, £60 a month or something for your kid to not do jiu-jitsu, or like to have a fight with them every time you got to bring them down. I think it's setting your kid the expectations for the kid early of like, this is something you are going to do for at least, we're going to commit to doing this for a year. At a year we can reassess, but within that time, it's not non-negotiable. We're going down. Like, yeah, we're going to miss a class every now and again because it's your friend's birthday party or something like that. But just like we don't have a tantrum every time we go to brush your teeth or every time we go to school. If it was me, you probably would. But, there's some things that parents aren't going to budge on. But if it's something that they feel is like an optional. But for me, jiu-jitsu isn't... I wouldn't even say jiu-jitsu, I'd just say you got to do a martial art. Like, you wouldn't be like... I'm successful as a parent if your kid can't ride a bike, or they can't swim, or they can't do like some basic activities like that are just good for human survival kind of thing, right? And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. Like, I think everyone should have at least some ability to defend themselves, at least have the ability to be confident in confrontation. Whether they ever get into a confrontation or not is a different matter, but at least have the confidence to, if something were to happen, I feel confident enough to look after myself a little bit.
Comes down also to like just discipline, it's like, for me, like a video that like when I'm feeling lazy that I always love like going back to is like, there's a video Kobe Bryant talks about before the season starts, how he signs a contract with himself where like he'll set different expectations. So for example, if you told yourself I would train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Monday comes around, you don't feel like it. Well, you already signed the contract with yourself, and if you don't go, well, it means you're not disciplined.
Yeah, and discipline isn't doing the things just when you're motivated and you want to do it. It's like just because you do something hard doesn't mean you're disciplined in doing it. Like it's the times when you don't want to go and you. In this case, the kid doesn't want to go and they're kicking off into the tantrum. If you're the same parent that is saying, I want my kid to grow up to be a a disciplined person who can stick to difficult things and not quit when things get tough, then equally you have to be a disciplined parent and show that, be like, look, we're not going to budge on this, so we're going to go. And worst case, I usually say to the parents as well, like, if little Timmy really doesn't want to come to jiu-jitsu, that's fine, but on a particular day, but make sure you bring them to the academy and get them to tell me that they don't want to come and train today, and I'll say, okay, cool, little Timmy, that's fine. I really like it if you did come onto the mats, that'd be great, but no one's forcing you to be here, kind of thing. And usually by then, by the time they get into the academy, they're like, fine, I'll do jits.
Yeah.
Did you ever struggle with motivation as a kid?
For me, I took a little break, maybe like a month or two when I was playing football. But to be honest, every time I like came to like pretty much every day I was trained, I was really lucky where I did a program with my school that allowed me to kind of leave school early where I could train. So for me, like I've been training so long and like full time that like I almost don't remember not training. You know, the biggest time I took off was during the pandemic. You know.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's really important is when you first sign on, make sure that you have a conversation with the child and make sure that they tell you that they want to do it. Because if they first say that they want to do it, then you can always bring that back whenever they don't want to. It's like, well, man, like you may be complaining today, but last week you're the one that told me to sign up. You made this commitment, you know.
So, Zoe, did you ever struggle with?
Yes, I did, and I would say like it was mostly because of injuries. I started to have injuries like really young, and it was quite demotivating. But at the same time, one thing my parents did, and I think that could work for other kids, was I was never forced to do jiu-jitsu or any martial arts, but I was forced to do something like a sport. So for us, it was like 3 times a week minimum, and you could choose. So for my sister, let's say she really didn't like jiu-jitsu at all, and I feel like forcing her to do jiu-jitsu wouldn't be fair because she hated it. But she was forced to do something else, so she chose dance. Same thing for me. I started with dance actually, but I hated it, and I decided to stick with jiu-jitsu. So I didn't have the pressure to going to jiu-jitsu, but I had to find something else. And for me, jiu-jitsu was always the most fun one, so that's just how I keep going. And I think like having friends who do it there as well helps a lot, like having being surrounded by people who are supporting you even when you're young. You don't need to be like a professional athlete to have like a good support system, but just like having friends and just making it fun like helps you stay in the sports, I found, because sometimes it's not that much jiu-jitsu that you're looking forward to, but you're looking forward to like the friends there, so sometimes it helps for
the environment.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
And the opposite is true as well. Like if a kid doesn't want to come to a class, it could be not because they don't like jiu-jitsu, but for example, you know, they're a bit shy about sparring in front of everyone else, or they don't feel confident yet, so they may actually enjoy the jiu-jitsu part, but there's like everything else that's going on that's a bit intimidating, and that may be you know, kind of the roadblock that you need to work on removing as a parent and as a coach.
Now, if everything just went quiet for a while there, it's because Veronica doesn't have a mic and went on a monologue. So sorry if the audio is a bit strange on that.
I was making, you know, I was doing my best to speak to.
There's a microphone on Zoe's shoulder,
Zoe's
so it looks weird. It is.
Well, you can repeat what I said.
No, you said it great, Veronica. I would never repeat. Excellent response. All right. This is from Jeff Garbies. I'm not sure. Do you know Jeff Garbies? I don't think I do. But he said, I'm not sure if it makes sense for you, but it's, what's the toughest part of keeping a great balance in your life? And then he's put young family, training, ...
Yeah,
now, I know you don't have a young family, but
I got 2 dogs accounts.
Unless there's something you need to tell us, Jeremy.
Nope. I think that's usually will be the hardest part, making sure that your business side, the personal side, and like the athlete side always stays in good balance. I think the big thing is setting your priorities. Like for me, when I first arrived to Ottawa, for example, my priority was really on building the team, so my focus was really more on teaching. So I kind of took a little break from training really to focus on the team.
Yeah.
And when I was ready to leave here and to start training for my camp here, well, I had to change my priorities because now the priorities were not so much the team, but it was me. And a lot of times that's the most hard part. If you're a coach, you want to be very selfless.
Yes.
Whereas if you're an athlete, unfortunately, you have to be very selfish. And whenever you can find that really good balance, that's usually when things click. The big thing for me was really setting time for everything. Like for example, like right now, like I have like my mornings where I'm training, my noons where I'm teaching, my like nights where I'm either training or teaching depending on the day. And then every day after like a certain time, then I'm really focusing on my personal side. When I'm not at the gym, I try to really focus on me and my family. So yeah, I think that's the big thing with keeping a good balance is just making sure that your priorities are right and that you set your goals right. That way you can make sure to balance your life the right way. But that's the hardest part. It never gets easier, to be honest. Like for example, in California, I felt like the business side and the athlete side were like peaking. Where I was teaching a lot, and I was, one thing I really love where I was running the school and I was like in this leadership role. And then on the other hand, I'm training in one of the best places in the world. I'm, training 6-7 days a week. I felt great. But then, I was also like halfway across the continent from my family. And that was a part that was really, really hard for me. At first, I didn't, when I first started leaving, it didn't hit me as much. But to be honest, after like almost like 3 years of being away, that's when it really hit me when my sister ended up getting a baby. And that's when I had to change my priorities to make sure that I could keep that good balance. So yeah, that's what I would say. Make sure you have good priorities, make sure you set your goals, and make sure you balance your life based on your goals and your priorities, not based on your feelings.
Yeah, I think you just got to see jiu-jitsu. It's really addictive at the start for like a new person coming in, and it becomes a bit like an arms race, and you can get sucked into this thing where you want to stay ahead of the people that started kind of around the time you did, or just after you did, and you want to catch the people up that started a bit before you, and that can get a little bit tough because you start thinking about other people's jiu-jitsu more than yours, and you haven't just thought about, right, this is just something that I'm going to do now. Like I said earlier, for the kids, that it's like brushing their teeth. For an adult, it's like it needs to be part of your life where you're going to say, right, I want to do jiu-jitsu until, for the rest of my life. Like, even when I'm 90, if I make it to 90, I want to be able to at least contribute to jiu-jitsu or be able to sit on the mats and watch and understand and stuff like that. And that doesn't mean going, 1,000 miles an hour, right, from the block, because I've seen a lot of attendance cards that are for a
like
month.
20 straight dots.
Yeah, and then
none.
second month, and then third month, and then it's like dot, and then gone, It's people never think the burnout's going to hit them, but I've seen enough cancelled attendance cards to know, like, it does happen. And just, jiu-jitsu should always just be additive to your life. It shouldn't be where I think you're missing time with like important family time for like so you can watch YouTube, for jiu-jitsu. Now, to be a good family person too, that might mean like you say, look, I'm sorry, we're not going to have dinner tonight. It's because this time is important to me, and for me to be a good person for the rest of the week, I need this 2 hours to go and train. So it's a tough to find that balance, but
I think one of my professor Glenn, told me when I was around like 16 was, and I'll still remember it. I think jiu-jitsu is a stress reliever at the end of the day. You know, you go to jiu-jitsu to unwind. You know, at least in my opinion. Sure, you can want to get better and you want to win and all that, but at the end of the day, it's all about one, making yourself better, and it helps, to be honest, to not think about it. I think it's the only time that I'm really like 100% focused on one thing is when I'm doing jiu-jitsu and I'm just focused on training. I think when jiu-jitsu becomes your stressor instead of stress reliever, that's really when you have to look at things and start changing things. You know, making sure that, okay, well, one, are you training too much? That's usually the case. Two, I think it's so important. Like for me, like one rule that I had when I was kind of like in school growing up, or well, my parents had this rule. I mean, was like one day or one night a week, we had to be eating dinner as a family. And it doesn't matter how hard you want to train, doesn't matter what your goals are. It's like, it could be Saturday, it could be Sunday, doesn't matter what day of the week. But one day we have to sit down and eat together. You know, and I think that is really the most important thing. Make sure that it's a stress reliever. When it becomes a stressor, start looking at things and make sure you can balance everything out to make everything fit correctly.
It can be tough with injuries as well, right? And Zoe, you've gone through a few injuries by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
How did you find balancing like your injury time off with wanting to train and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's really hard, and honestly, I've learned it the hard way, I would say, because it happened in the past where I got an injury and I just kept training over it, and it ends up in surgery, you know. So I think over time you learn to listen to your body and make sure you're feeling good to go train, because otherwise it's not good for the long term. It might be good for the month. You might be better than the other students in the class because you keep going on the mats and everything, but at one point your body will stop you at one point. So I think it's really important to keep that balance. And for me, it was really important to stay involved in jiu-jitsu even though I had to take some time off. So I had to stop training jiu-jitsu for like I think 7-8 months. So that's been really hard since I've been training my whole life. But for me, I was sometimes just showing up to the competition to see my teammates compete. I was just sitting in Jeremy's class and try to get some knowledge in. So I think for me that really helped to just stay connected to jiu-jitsu, stay connected to the environment. Also to the people at the gym, right? Because you build some connection, and losing all that at once, it's really hard on the mental. So I would say, just try to find a way to stay in jiu-jitsu even though it's not necessarily training.
Yeah. I think there are definitely injuries where you need to take like time off away from training to let it rest. But I think a lot of people, especially when you're new to jiu-jitsu, they'll get like a minor injury and they're like, right, I have to take 3 months off now because the doctor says 6 to 12 off and then I can start training again. The doctor's always going to say like 6 to 12 off. But if you've got, let's say, like last Christmas, actually, I broke my wrist and I just trained without using my wrist. I just took my hand in the belt and just do jiu-jitsu with one hand. The wrist is getting fine, and it wasn't hurting. Now not everyone has to do that, but like you said, you can still go on the mats, and most of the time your instructor will be very happy to try and work around your injury so you're not aggravating it, and or you can just sit mat side and write some notes or try and absorb the information, be around for the team. And
I think when it comes to injuries, like one thing I have to give credit to Kendall for this, looking at how she dealt with a back injury leading up to ADCC, for me it was remarkable. I remember actually last time we were here after we went to the DC Fresh camp, like we could barely lift her up. She could barely stand by herself, and after West Coast trials, like she had to stay in bed for almost like a month, and then you looked at the performance that she had in ADCC, and I saw her through the camp we really made sure of two things. Like, one was to keep the habits. You know, if you really do a good job of building your habits, the best thing you can do is keep them. You know, like for example, she was in training, but she was always on the mat. You know, she would come to watch a session. She would sometimes just sit at the gym and watch. And that really showed me a lot about it. I think it came down to a few things. It came down to reminding yourself, like, it doesn't matter who you are in jiu-jitsu, your goal should be the black belt. You know, it doesn't matter if you want to be a champion or whatever it is. The journey is the most important part. You know, if you're a white belt, well, remember, like, you want to get to the black belt. So short-term gratification will not help you do that. You're looking at long-term success. And you risking re-injury is what's going to stop you from being able to do that. You know, and that's really the important part, is to look at, you know, the nice thing and the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is you can do it all your life if you're smart. If you listen to your body. And adding that one extra training session or pushing yourself or like past your limits for no reason, or, you know, even if it's one tournament, well, that one tournament over 10 years means nothing. You know, and that's really what you have to look at. You have to look at the big picture in the long term, not just the short term, especially in terms of injuries. You know, you want to keep improving while you're injured. Jiu-jitsu's grown so much now. There's instructionals. There's so much footage that you can watch out there. This is amazing. For me, in my opinion, I train more off the mats than on the mats. You know, watching jiu-jitsu and like studying. I think that's the big thing. Remember, it's not about the short term; it's about the long term.
And also, like, just making sure you're surrounded with really good training partners for me was a really huge thing. Just usually training with higher belts is really good when you just got a surgery, yes, but also an injury. It's like part of my life at the moment. But when you get an injury, because usually they're more aware of what they're doing. Also, make sure they understand the level you're capable to train at. So sometimes just flow rolling with some people. And I used to train with people that I had like amazing battles with. So they were amazing to get ready for competitions. But to come back from an injury, it might not be the best partner ever.
Yeah.
So you got to know your training partners, and also just keep in mind that there's so many different levels of training. Like Jeremy said, like you can train mentally, you can just do some techniques in the class, some specific sparring, and then you keep building up on that ladder.
Yeah, for sure. There's a whole gamut, and you know, a back injury like Kendall's there is probably like one of the worst to try and navigate. Like when you got like you kind of use anything from like the hip, like up to your neck, it's like pretty hard to work around.
Yeah.
But any kind of like finger, wrist, elbow, ankle, knee, they're pretty easier to work around, I think. So yeah, I think it's tough. You'll get, as you do more jiu-jitsu, you get to know your own body and what's sensible and what's not so sensible to train with. Jeremy, you mentioned that the black belt should be a goal. Obviously, the black belt is just like a symbol. So what do you mean? Like what do we mean when we say like black belt's the goal?
By the black belt, I mean like training your whole life. You know, or not training your whole life, but training for as long as you can. You know, for example, like when I was a blue belt, I was training all the time so much that like at a certain point it stopped being fun, you know, and I had to take like a month off just to make sure that I didn't burn out, to make sure that I could keep going for so many more years, you know. And a big thing of what I meant by that is, like, for example, if you're at the blue belt and you destroy your knee, well, the journey's not over. You have time to fix your knee and make sure your knee is 100% and keep training. You know, and that's really the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is, you know, I think the black belt is really when, or at least from what I hear, I don't know yet, but, you know, that's really when the journey starts. And it's important to look at it that way. Because when you look at your like day to day, then that's when it's really easy to burn out and over push yourself. When you look at it as this really long journey, then it's much easier to do that. You know, it's really on making sure that you're not focusing on like competing with the person next to you, but competing with yourself. I think that's kind of what I meant by that.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm not particularly like goal driven, and like I'm not like, oh, I want to get the black belt for the symbol of it or anything like that. I'm more I like knowing if I'm on the right path, and then the goals kind of hit themselves if you feel like if you're walking on the right path. Then I feel like you'll hit those milestones anyway. But I don't think, oh, the next milestone is this thing, I'm gonna shoot for that. I want to like make sure I'm not hitting like the left and right. Okay, like if I know I'm training consistently, I'm doing my best to like, we have these accountability sheets kind of thing that you saw on the wall, and you know, if there's too many X's or stuff like I'm not doing that, I'm like not on the path, right? It's like I'm going too far left or I'm going too far right on the thing that I aspire to be, which is, you know, somewhere down there. And if I hit that black belt goal on that path, then that's cool, but it's not like I'm going to be black belt and that's the thing that drives me forward. I'm not sure if that makes a lot of sense, but in my head it's the way I look at it. I like the whole thing around, you know, you should think about training till the rest of your life. What do you think the main reason like adults quit jiu-jitsu is?
So many, you know, fear of embarrassment, injury, you know, lack of gratification, lack of praise, you know. A lot of times just life gets in the way, you know. I think the main reason people quit is lack of recognition, you know. Is most times, you know, a good instructor, you know, I think that's, for example, looking at GBRL, for me, like, one thing that makes a school amazing is the retention and being able to keep those members, you know. And I look at it and like, I remember when we came with Professor Kendall, and then last night with Professor Hodger, we had way more people, but we also had the same people, you know. And I think that's a big part of it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you don't want. I think there's loads that go into it, you know. Safety is like another big one that we talk about way more. I think about way more now as a coach than I did, you know, a few years ago when I started coaching. And I feel like in general in jiu-jitsu, especially like this year with the ICPs, talks a lot about safety, not just being safe technically on the mat, but everything from hygiene to harassment to all that gets covered in detail. And then you've also got just, you know, like we were talking about earlier, for the kids as well, keep it fun, because people, I said this at the end of a class message maybe a week or so ago, like, let me worry about making you good. Like, you just come and have fun. Like, I'll do the rest. Like I stay up having no social life watching Danaher, so you guys can go and just enjoy training. Like, let me figure out how to get you to be good. You guys just come and have fun. Like, I'll do the rest. Yeah, I think more now about I've got a friend, Rob, who I'm trying to get down to do jiu-jitsu. And he's done one session like many years ago when I was still training at Harrogate. But he's like, oh no, jiu-jitsu is not for me, I'm not a fighter. And it's hard to get those people through the door on the opposite side of things. I think once people try it and find out what it is, it's like jiu-jitsu is a really good, I don't want to like bring it down, but like a commodity, like it's something we like sell, like it's a really good product, but it's hard to get sometimes those kind of people through the door.
Yeah, I think it's like, you can see jiu-jitsu as a fight. You can also see it as a game. But I think you should see it as a lifestyle. You know, it's not about beating somebody. It's just about, to be honest, it's about being honest with yourself and learning more about yourself. And, you know, I think like jiu-jitsu teaches you a lot about who you are. And it's more to listen to that. Yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is awesome. So
Ryan Hall and Lex Friedman's podcast described it as like jiu-jitsu is a philosophy that we express physically, and I quite like that.
Yeah, it's you know, for those people that think like, you know, to be honest, for me, like, I don't see myself as a fighter. You know, I see myself as like, yes, I'm very competitive, But for me, like jiu-jitsu is, it's a lot like chess. It's about like creating traps. It's more of a game, in my opinion. Like, yes, sure, it's a martial art, and one of the best martial arts for self-defense. But at the end of the day, to keep it fun and to make sure that you don't have that kind of mentality of like fighting your partner, because at the end of the day, your partner is not your competitor. Your partner is, the ones that will help you reach your goals and get to that next level.
Yeah.
It's really important to look at it that way, in my opinion. But
So what do you think? I think one of the biggest things in jiu-jitsu now, on that philosophy side of things, is how jiu-jitsu is becoming more like a sport, like football or rugby or any other kind of like normal sport. But then in like you were doing the traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, in martial arts, there's like traditional values that like the stuff that doesn't happen in sports, like you don't bow onto a mat, or you don't bow to like a picture of someone when you go do your football game, like oh, there's Cristiano Ronaldo, thank you. And there can be like a blurred line between like, oh, this is a really strange thing to do in the modern world, but we're doing like this modern martial art, but it's got these traditional kind of things, and some people really don't like the traditional stuff, and some people I find quite enjoy that discipline side of things. How did you find it going from something that's a bit more traditional to a bit more sporty?
That's a good question. I might be biased because I grew up with the tradition, so for me it's really important, and I keep some of them. Like I will always turn around to tie my belt. I don't want to let the professor see me with an untied belt, things like that. But I do understand how some things are not necessarily necessary for training, like for example the belt. But I do like to have a certain discipline, because I think that's what is linking all the martial arts together, and that's what it makes it different from another sport like football, for example, or soccer. I don't know which one you use here.
You can use football, it's all right, you good.
Perfect. I mean, I think the discipline is what changes people outside of the mats, if I can say it this way. So I have a lot of respect for the mats, for the people I'm training with, for the professors, and I think that's something big about martial arts. So for me, it's important to keep those traditions, and simple movements like bowing before jumping on the mats, fist bump with your partners, things like that are what keeps it in the sport, I would say.
Yeah, just remembering the roots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think some of the traditional stuff is it's like a double-edged sword, because it's the same things that make GB great, that I think like the uniform stuff, or that kind of traditional stuff that makes it a bit different from just a random sporty jiu-jitsu club that we also get bashed on for a bit. Like people say, oh, it's a cult because we all wear the same uniform, or we have like we're all bowing on to the mats and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think it's that stuff that give us a really strong sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, and like we're part of something bigger, rather than just just showing up and looking after yourself kind of thing and trying to beat my random teammates. It feels like we're all part of a big community, and we're all trying to get better together.
Yeah, and I think like jiu-jitsu is so much bigger than just the movements we're doing on the mats. Like it's not just about the positions and the points and all the submissions, but it's also like the way you're thinking. Like you mentioned a little bit earlier, it's like a philosophy that you express with your body. So I found for myself like the philosophy is in the tradition. And
yeah, I think it's hard for that's something that this podcast actually does quite a bit. Is it's hard, especially in kids classes. We can talk about values really easily. The word of the week is integrity, which it is this week. Do the right thing even when no one's watching.
Yeah.
To bring that up in an adults class for me feels a bit more weird. Like I'm trying to preach to people who are, already well-established people in like the world. Like what does this fucking guy know?
Yeah.
But I think through having these kind of conversations on the podcast, we can talk a bit more to people who have the mind to listen to it or are happy to listen to it about the more traditional side of things, the value side of things. Now, like Jeremy said, that one of the things is legacy, and for a while, like I was like, I'm not too fussed about the legacy, especially if you read like some of the Drysdale's books around like what the Gracies were actually doing and what actually kind of how it came about. But then I also went to listen to Victor and Braulio did a talk about like how they were getting on in making jiu-jitsu quite popular here in the UK, and they kind of got, they got screwed over a few times. They had to like battle it out. There was plenty of offers for them to go teach in California in big schools and make a lot of money and not live in rainy, cloudy England. But they stuck it out, and I was like, well, if they hadn't gone through that adversity and done all those kind of things, I wouldn't get to do a job that I love now, and all of the 500 plus students at GBRL wouldn't have a place to train. And so if paying a bit of homage to the people who stuck it out and made jiu-jitsu something when it was nothing is like a little bow when I go onto the mat, like that's a good enough deal for me, because I get to make a good living doing something I love, and if the bow is a price for that, then I'm happy to pay it.
It's so important for people to like. A lot of the people that say like GB is like cult and whatever, a lot of times don't understand why we have certain things. Like very similar, like for example, the uniform. A lot of people like complain about the uniform. Go to a football game, and point me one player on the same team that's not wearing the same thing.
I say this a lot too.
It's a common thing to make sure that everyone looks like one. And obviously there's so many more reasons why the uniform is important. For me, that's all I need to understand why we're wearing a uniform. And to be honest, like I've gone to schools where the uniform is not enforced, and every time like I just don't like it, especially in Nogi. I think Nogi, like having that uniform is just as important as the gi, if not more important. Like you go to a school that doesn't have, like, for example, the ranked rash guards. You could train with anybody. You have no idea how long they've been training or who, what belt they are wearing. The uniform helps with that. I think it's important to always remember where you come from and how jiu-jitsu came this way. And, a bow is just a simple sign of respect, And if you have a problem with that, probably have to dig deeper.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because a lot of schools will actually like advertise themselves with like the opposite of that. Like, we won't make you wear our uniform. We're not just like money grabbing, or we're going to teach you leg locks on day one, whereas other schools will force you to do a curriculum, or like, it's funny how the things that I feel make us really good are the things that are the opposite things people try and make as something that makes them good, which is an interesting dynamic.
At the end of the day, it's a system. Everyone has their own way of doing things. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, and I think Gracie Baja is one of, if not the best, for those reasons. And there's a reason we have the amount of schools that we have. And all those little things, they matter. And every time I go back to a place that does not enforce the rules, you start to realize why everything is the way it is. Why everything, to the smallest little detail, is important. From attendance cards to bowing to Master Carlos. And I think sometimes it takes that to understand everything. And to be honest, it's like, if you don't want to do that, that's okay. But we do it, and that's why we are who we are.
Yeah, I think like all the etiquette stuff, I was talking about this one time, is like, it comes down to like three things. It's respect for your training partners and respect for yourself. Safety, to, if it's a hygiene thing, like we don't want to be getting like skin infections and stuff like that. then it just comes down to, not being no individual being bigger than the team.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of the schools out there that say like, yeah, we're a really good team, but it's really just a bunch of individuals that train together, and one individual will get like way more support than the rest of the team, and I think something we do really well here at GB is like if no individual, or at least at GBRL I can say, is like no individual is bigger than the team. There's no like one person that's gonna that gets a preferential treatment for whatever reason. It's always the team comes first, and sometimes that isn't good in terms of like for stuff for our business, but like it still's like the right thing to do, and that comes down to like that integrity thing. It's doing the right thing, not the easy thing.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like making it about more than just yourself. It's about everything else. It's about the team. And like I've gone to places where, I think like especially instructors do this, where like because they own the school or because they're the black belt on the mat, they kind of put themselves on like this pedestal of like I'm better than everyone, or like you guys should listen to me and you guys should do this. It's like, yes, you're a black belt, but it doesn't make you like a god.
Yeah.
And it's really about when you step on the mat, kind of like something Professor Mike said yesterday. He was like, this is a thank you from me to you, and it's really, really important that we remember that. It's no one could get where we are without the person next to them. And it's about the team. It's not about yourself. Jiu-jitsu is the one thing that you will never get better if you're alone.
Yeah.
And that's important to remember.
I think that like takes you back to. It feels very primal sometimes, like the strong connections you can make in jiu-jitsu. It's not quite like anything. Like for a while now, I've mainly got my friends from jiu-jitsu, but a while back I'd have my friends from school. I have my friends from Thai boxing. I have my group of friends from the Marines. I have my jiu-jitsu friends, and the relationship you have is very different with all of them. But I think the relationships you make in jiu-jitsu are particularly strong and have a uniqueness and specialness to them.
I think choking each other helps.
Yeah. But you're just around each other and so close to each other all the time, and you're on the kind of the same path of like wanting to get better at the same thing. There's like ups and downs. You go through like the same bit of struggles and adversity, and you just get to kind of build that camaraderie with each other, which is really nice. Yeah. What did you think of the Hodges seminar yesterday? You enjoy it?
Mind blown. It was awesome. It's like a few weeks ago we had Professor Caron come down to and teach. Like it's kind of funny. It was like the opposite. He taught like a lot of like side control escape and mount escapes. But like Professor Hodger taught a lot of like the top side control and the mount stuff. And I think like every single time I learn from any one of the Gracies, it almost feels like I know nothing about jiu-jitsu. And it always impresses me how great jiu-jitsu can be, and like especially yesterday, like learning from the GOAT, arguably, at least in the gi. It was fantastic. And what I really loved was how technically he showed two techniques. Sure, he added a bunch of details which made it more than that, but he showed something that for a brand new white belt could help their game. But also for like me, for example, who's been training like 16 years, competes a lot. Well, I still got a lot of that seminars with the same technique. And there was nothing like, it's not like we were doing crazy bear and balls or anything like that. It was fundamentals. But what made it great for everybody were the details. And I think that's really what I noticed, especially learning from Karen, learning from Hodger yesterday was the details is what matter. And yeah, it was really awesome yesterday.
It's tough as a coach sometimes to give that, but he did a really good job, I thought. I remember the first class I ever taught, like properly at GBRL, was week 13 class A, and it's the one where you do the self-defense triangle, the hip bump sweep, and the Kimura, which are like big techniques, right? And I was nervous to do it. Mike was going to be there watching me. It's like a blue belt. And so I decided to watch all of Danaher's Kimura series, all of his closed guard series, and all of the end of the system triangle, right? So I'm here watching like 20, 25 hours of instructional content to teach 1 hour class. And obviously I'm trying to give all these hundreds of details, and this is when the academy just opened, so it was just white belts, like with a few stripes maybe. And we get to, I'm obviously running over time because I'm teaching for too long, and I get to the Kimura, and I'm doing the Kimura. I'm talking about pull-based Kimuras and like how you can put the hand in your own thigh so they can't grab their thigh, and lifting your hips slightly to get a bit, and pulling it onto the power line. And Mike comes away and he goes, T, they don't know what a Kimura, like they don't know even how to grip the Kimura. So, you're teaching stuff that I don't even know, right? Just like, take it down a little bit. Like, you don't need to give. So like that's why I really enjoy teaching the more advanced classes that we were talking about. It's really nice teaching GB3 and GB2 because you can give all those details. And what makes a really great coach is that in those GB1 classes, being able to break all those details down to like, right, what are the most like essential elements that I can give someone to get on the journey of learning a Kimura. I don't need to give them all 20 today because they're not ready to know all 20s today. Just like we've got a fire here, if at the start we just threw all the wood on, we wouldn't have a fire, it'd like burn itself out. You kind of got to let it build. Generate.
See the fire before this.
And it's the same with a student, right? If you were just to overload them with, your 20 details on the Kimura, then they miss, they miss how to get started because they're trying to remember all this stuff. They don't even know how to grip. They just learned close guard today. Like,
I think like one thing that really helps, at least as a student, like for example, for something I noticed from yesterday, so that really helps digest those details, was a lot of the way Professor Hodger taught it. Like for example, there's a lot of the times where like, for example, an instructor will take a simple technique, but then the first time they show the technique, they're going to talk about like 35 details. And then the second time they'll talk about like none. And the third time they'll just show it again and they'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's really important, especially for instructors to kind of help digest those details, is like whenever I show technique, I try to only add one detail at a time. So like if I show the technique once, I'll talk about one really specific detail. Like, I'm not gonna spoil any of the Hodger stuff, but
it was already written down and posted into the group chat. So you're
perfect.
Yeah.
So like for example, like little things like the hip to the rib from yesterday, like those little details. I think if you would have showed the technique once and talked about all the details at first, and then just kept showing the technique and talked about like the steps, I would have not remembered one of those details. But I think the way he showed it, he would like show one technique and talk about like one really specific detail. Then he would show it again and talk about like another really specific detail. I think when the instructor does it that way, it's so much easier to digest. And that's what makes it great for everybody. For the no stripe white belt that just came to the jiu-jitsu and doesn't know, well, they can really just focus on the big steps. Step 1, 2, 3. For the more advanced, they can focus on the little things. I think that's a great way of giving that GB1. At the end of the day, GB1 is for everybody as well. And I think that's a really good way of doing that for the advanced people.
Yeah. Right, well, it's getting late. I think we'll call the podcast, enjoy this fire a little bit, then we're going to get some food. Make sure these guys have a mince pie, and then call it a night. Thank you very much for being here, Jeremy. Thank you, Zoe. Thanks Silent Veronica.
I was just sad. I guess she might be on the podcast. But.
Okay, till next time, guys.
Thank you. If you guys are in Canada, Ottawa, hit me up. Please come down, come visit. We'd love to have you guys come train. Greasy Ball, Ottawa. See you guys there. Boom.